What's up YouTube, Zero here, and today I have an amazing Sylveon EX and Sylveon deck in Pokemon TCG Pocket. That's right, this deck is only Sylveons. In this video, I'll go over the deck build that you can see on the left hand side of the screen. I'll talk about each of these cards individually, and I'll talk about why this deck works great with only Sylveon Pokemon in here, of course, Eevees as well. Before I get into it, I do want to say if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon TCG content. Do a bunch of other video games, so feel free to check those out as well. Without further ado, let's talk about this deck. Going to start with Sylveon EX. You've probably seen Sylveon EX in a lot of deck builds recently, not just mine, but other content creators, because Sylveon EX is a phenomenal card due to its ability Happy Ribbon. Now, Happy Ribbon is a professor's research in an EX card. So Happy Ribbon, once during your turn, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may draw 2 cards. So as soon as you play Sylveon EX, you get essentially a free Professor's Research. That means if you also have a Professor's Research in your hand, you can draw 4 cards in that turn. If you're able to evolve 2 Sylveon EXs at once, you have 6 cards drawn during that turn if you also utilize a Professor's Research. So Sylveon EX can get you through your deck really quickly, allowing you to have the cards in your hand that you need so you can implement your strategy a lot quicker than your opponent. So Sylveon EX is phenomenal for getting through decks. There are a lot of deck builds that has Sylveon EX in their decks specifically for the ability. These are decks that don't even run Psychic Energy. They just want that ability because they're able to get through their deck. They're able to draw the cards they need. It is an absolutely phenomenal ability. But this is a Psychic or Fairy deck, however you want to look at it. But this is a deck that runs the energy Sylveon needs to attack. So I do like that. I find it a little bit harder to put a Pokemon in a deck in which they're only being used for their ability. I'm not saying that that's not good, it's just not my style as much, because sometimes you could get caught with your pants down where you have this Pokemon just taking damage while you're trying to find other Pokemon in your deck. But like I mentioned, this deck runs the energy Sylveon needs to attack, and it attacks with Fairy Wind for 2 energy, 1 psychic, 1 colorless for 70 damage. So not a fantastic attack. It does deal a little damage, not a ton of damage. 70 is okay for 2 energy, but it's not going to break the bank. You can see in the video, I'm facing a Decidueye right now. Decidueye for 2 energy deals 80 damage. If an opponent has damage on it, for 2 energy, uses Pierce the Pain for 100. So there are better cards for only 2 energy dealing more damage, but 70 is at least something, not just utilizing Sylveon for its ability. It can also attack for 70. Sylveon EX can be found in the Eevee Grove packs. Now let's talk about the other Sylveon, the non-EX Sylveon. Sylveon non-EX has Evo Harmony. For 2 energy, 1 psychic, 1 colorless, deals 40 plus damage. So on an initial look, 40 damage isn't great for 2 energy. However, this does have a stipulation. This attack does 30 more damage for each evolution Pokemon on your bench. So that's absolutely amazing. If you have a fully evolved bench, that means you have 2 Sylveon EXs and another non-EX Sylveon on your bench. This Sylveon can deal 130 damage. That is great. Of course, it does require a little bit of setup. However, that's what Sylveon EX is for. Sylveon EX Hope in the Dream, you get 2 out, you evolve 2 Sylveon EXs, so you're able to draw 4 cards. You're able to utilize your Professor's Researches to draw your 4 cards. So you're getting through your deck quickly. You're getting all of these cards that you need. You're getting all of the evolutions that you need. So then you have a fully evolved bench. You have Sylveon in that active slot, and you're dealing 130 damage. However, if you aren't able to have a fully evolved bench, if you do only have 2 evolutions on the bench, you're still dealing 100 damage for 2 energy. So that's pretty solid. Nothing to take away from. As long as you do have a couple of evolutions on your bench, you're still dealing pretty solid damage with Sylveon. Now, of course, only have 1 evolution on your bench, you're dealing 70 damage, and no evolutions, you're only dealing that 40 damage. So the hope and the dream for Sylveon non-EX is getting those evolutions on your bench so it can attack for a large amount of damage, that 130 damage. Sylveon non-EX is also going to be found in those EV Grove packs. Next, you're going to have a couple of pairs of EVs in order to evolve into Sylveon EX and Sylveon. So the first EV I go with is the non-EX EV with its a move, Collect. You draw a card. For 1 colorless energy, you draw a card. Again, we're trying to get through the deck as quickly as possible. We're trying to get Sylveon, trying to get Sylveon EX. So utilizing Collect is going to help us get there. This EV is going to be found in the EV Grove packs. Next is EVEX. Now what's great about EVEX is its ability, VV Evolve. This Pokemon can evolve into any Pokemon that evolves from EV. If you play it from your hand onto this Pokemon. So that's pretty awesome. You can utilize any evolution. In this case, it's going to be either Sylveon EX or Sylveon non-EX to evolve EVEX. So that's pretty great. You can utilize either Sylveon to evolve EVEX. It also allows you to have both of these Sylveons in this deck and to evolve them onto the playing field. So EVEX is absolutely great and great for any deck in which you want to run multiple EVs. EVEX is also going to be found in the EV Grove packs. EVEX also has a move for 1 colorless energy. Bite deals 30 damage. So that's pretty good for 1 colorless energy on a basic. You're able to get that out in the active slot. Attacking for 30 pretty quickly, so that deals a lot of damage. Can absolutely help swing the tide a little bit. However, of course, EVEX, being an EX Pokemon, having only 90 HP is a little risky, because opponents are going to see that light up in the eyes of your opponents. They're going to see 90 HP. I'm going to want to try and take this out so I can get my 2 points. So just be aware of that. You don't want your EVEX to go down pretty easily. Next, let's talk about some of the cards in this deck. Professor's Research. Mentioned it earlier. You draw 2 cards. Pretty basic card to have in a lot of decks. Pokeball. You draw a basic Pokemon from your deck to your hand. Next, I want to talk about Giant Cape. Giant Cape, the Pokemon that this Pokemon tool is attached to, increases their HP by 20. As I've been going through and battling, I've noticed that allowing Sylveon EX to get up to 160 HP is pretty important. It's going to get you over some pretty important breaking points, and that's going to be pretty crucial to the survivability of your EVEX or your Sylveon EX. It's going to be pretty crucial to your survivability of the deck and winning battles. So I love Giant Cape. It does get you over some nice breaking points, and it does allow you to stay in the battle a little longer. So I have 2 Giant Capes in here. It's really nice to have on your Sylveon EX. And Giant Cape is going to be found in the Space Time Smackdown Dialga packs. Next, EV Bag. EV Bag is great for EVs. you can choose one of two options on your EV bag. So the first option is you can increase any evolution by 10 damage. So you can increase evolution's damage by 10. Or you can heal 20 damage from each of your evolutions. So this is pretty nice combined with any evolution, because it can do one of two options. Depending on how the battle plays out, you may want to use one or the other. What's also nice about this card is that it's an item card. That means you can play both EV bags at once during one turn, and you can also play one of your trainer cards, your supporter cards, that you're only allowed to use once during one of your turns. So, if you want to deal an extra 20 damage, you can play two EV bags. So now your Sylveon EX could be dealing 90 damage. Your non-Sylveon EX, your non-EX Sylveon, could be dealing up to 150 damage. So that's pretty phenomenal to have in your back pocket. Or if you wanted to, a couple of evolutions on the field have damage on them, you can heal 20 damage from each of them, or you can heal 40 damage if you have both of these EV bags. Nice card to have, especially in an evolution only deck. And EV bag is going to be found in the EV Grove packs. Next, let's talk about a card that combines nicely with EV bag, Pokemon Center Lady. Do note I only have one Pokemon Center Lady in this deck, but Pokemon Center Lady can heal damage from one of your Pokemon and all special conditions. So that's going to be nice to combine with EV bag if you have a Pokemon in the active slot, say it's Sylveon EX. You want to heal up a lot of damage, you can utilize two EV bags to heal up 40 HP, and then Pokemon Center Lady to heal up 30 HP. So now you're healing up 70 HP in one turn. So that's really nice, going to increase the survivability of your Pokemon, and of course, your deck, leading you to victory. Next, couple of cards that I have in a lot of my decks. I have one Cyrus and one Sabrina. Of course, Sabrina, you switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent does get to choose which card on the bench they put in, but this disrupts a lot of strategies, can force a Pokemon from the bench to the active slot that your opponent doesn't want there, so you can start dealing damage to that Pokemon, or perhaps you're forcing a Pokemon to the active slot that has a high retreat cost, and you're forcing your opponent to figure out how to retreat them out of that active slot. A lot of great ways to utilize Sabrina. Slow down your opponent from attaching energy onto one of their Pokemon. It's just great for a lot of reasons. Sabrina is going to be found in the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. And Pokemon Center Lady, I didn't mention this previously, but it can be found in the Shining Revelry packs. Next, Cyrus, another great card. Cyrus, you switch in one of your opponent's benched Pokemon that has damage on it to the active slot. I mentioned earlier Sylveon EX does not deal a lot of damage. It deals 70 damage. This is going to give your opponent a lot of opportunities to retreat a damaged Pokemon, as opposed to you being able to KO it, because you're not going to be hitting a lot of breaking points on the more powerful Pokemon. You're going to be hitting for a decent amount of damage, but not a damage that's going to one-hit KO, sometimes not even two-hit KO, depending upon the Pokemon. Of course, Charizard has 180 HP, Incineroar has 170 HP, and so on and so forth. Those are just a couple of examples. But because you're not going to be one-hit KOing, or potentially not even two-hit KOing, your opponent is going to have a lot of opportunities to retreat their Pokemon. So you utilize Cyrus to bring that damaged Pokemon to the active slot, so you can either finish it off or continue damaging it. And of course, if you've damaged it with Sylveon EX and you finally get your non-EX Sylveon up and running, you can finish it off, retreat your Sylveon EX, and put your Sylveon out there so you can finish it off with the higher damage output. Cyrus is going to be found in the Space-Time Smackdown Palkia packs. Last but not least is Mars. I do like Mars over Red Card. I know some people run Red Card. Red Card is always going to shuffle your opponent's hand into their deck, and they draw 3 cards. Mars, your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of their remaining points needed to win. Now, it is a supporter card. However, as the game goes on and your opponent may be getting a point or two, Mars is going to make it harder to have the cards your opponent needs to win. So Mars is great, of course, early in the game. They draw 3 cards if they don't have any points, but as the game goes on, perhaps you're shuffling a lot of cards your opponent has in their hand back into their deck, and they may only draw 1 or 2 cards. So you could potentially really disrupt their strategy by utilizing Mars. So I do have 1 Mars in this deck. I do like Mars in this deck. So make sure that you're paying attention to the battle and figuring out when to use Mars. Mars is a little bit more of a strategic card, because sometimes you may say, you know what, even though my opponent has a lot of cards in their hand, I'm going to wait a little bit to utilize Mars until I'm really damaging them, until I'm giving them only 1 or 2 cards to draw rather than 3 cards. So you really have to utilize a strategy with Mars. So just pay attention to that, as Mars is a great card, but does take a little bit of strategy to utilize. Now, I'm not saying don't utilize it at the beginning of battle, but it may depend on how you feel about your hand, how you feel about what card your opponent has on the field. So you have to kind of think about it a little bit, but it is a great card to utilize. And Mars is going to be found in the Space-Time Smackdown Palkia packs. Mars is also great to counter Sylveon EX. I mentioned earlier, Sylveon EX is a fantastic card. It allows you to draw 2 cards as soon as you evolve. A lot of decks are utilizing it. Even decks that don't run Psychic or Fairy Energy, however you want to look at it. But that's going to allow your opponent to build up a lot of cards in their hand. So Mars is going to be a great counter to that. It's going to almost neutralize that effect. They draw a bunch of cards, they don't play any of them. You utilize Mars to shuffle all of those cards back into their deck. So it's an absolutely great card. I love this deck. I've done very well with it, and if y'all check it out, y'all are going to do great with it as well. Let me know in the comments section if you'd make any changes to this deck. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon TCG content. Until next time, peace.